Hi, this is Elliot Fishman, and welcome to our latest Facebook Live. Today is actually our last Facebook Live in the month of May. Next week is June. It's hard to imagine this will be Memorial Day weekend, and so welcome everybody. And see, I'm growing my beard still. You see, it's in case some of you didn't see it. Now you can see it. And I hope everybody's doing okay. If you start looking at the numbers of COVID cases, the numbers are getting better and better. I know there's things like Hopkins yesterday shut down their last COVID unit, the bio-intense areas for COVID patients. So we had 11 of them at one point. Now it's shut down. So that's wonderful news. It means we're going in the right direction. There's still a lot of patients with COVID every day. There's additional, I think, 30,000 cases, but the numbers are substantially smaller than previous. There's less hospitalizations. Remember, a lot of the people with COVID positive are tested, but they're asymptomatic. So all that's wonderful. There's less really sick patients who do get sick. There's medication to treat them, so the death rate is way down. Also now, age 12 or over, you can get a vaccine, right? So get your vaccine if you haven't gotten it. The numbers were that more than 50% of Americans who are eligible for a vaccine as of a couple days ago got it, but we need to get those numbers up to the 70s and 80s to really get everybody safe. And I think things are opening up. I was in New York last weekend visiting my grandchildren and children, and what I did notice there was the majority of people walking on the street, so it's open air, followed the CDC recommendations. They were walking around without a mask. All the stores, as of last Saturday and Sunday, required masks. So if you went to the bagel store, you went to any store, you're wearing a mask. I know now, I saw in the paper that some of the stores like Panero's, I saw Wegmans, which is a supermarket, I think Walmart perhaps, they're now saying that you don't have to wear a mask in the stores, and of course employees who were vaccinated don't need to wear a mask, but it's all a little bit tricky because how do you know who really has worn them, who really is COVID negative and who isn't? You're not like you're wearing a high or something, so that's a little bit tricky. So you're relying on people telling the truth, which is always not a really great way of doing things, but nevertheless it is going in the right direction. I did ask the question for this week's talk, is COVID over? And there's a bunch of articles, an article today, I think Harvard Business Review, making the point that particularly people who were really good during COVID, when they were really careful, they followed every single rule, it's very hard for them just to come back. I'm sure you know it affects some of you, it affects some of your family members and friends and different people you know who've been working from home for 16 months and really don't want to go back to work. Now it's like, well, this is pretty good. I like working from home. I don't got to work. I don't got to drive. I don't got to park. I don't got to do this. I think at the end of the day, everybody has to be back. There's certain things you can do from home, I understand. But working from home, as someone told me, you're a consultant. When you're at work, you work as a team. It's hard to be a team. All those people who babble about using Zoom and using Microsoft Teams and all these nonsensical things, those things do really well when you can't get together. There's no doubt. I run a speaker series for Hopkins, and we write about it in JSCR, and we've done the speaker series remotely. We finished our last one, Sandy Greenberg, the other night. It was amazing. But the advantage of it was that you could watch it from home. We had people watching it from New York. We had people watching it from California and every place in between. Normally, we would have been meeting in one of the rooms at Hopkins, the auditorium, and if you weren't there, you would be a snooze or lose. If you were there, you heard it. If you weren't there, you didn't hear it. We didn't record it. We didn't broadcast it. Now we had, like I said, we had people who weren't here who could do it. People who didn't want to stay around could listen on their car phone. They can listen from home. They can listen over dinner. There's a lot of advantages. Of course, a disadvantage for me, I would spend a day with the speaker. I didn't do that. So the personal touch, some people I knew, it was great to see them again. Some people I never knew. People introduced me. I never really met them, but over the phone. So it was so much more fun to be together with them. Then we go to dinner, and you'd build lifelong friendships, starting one moment at a time. I think the humanity of things, the ability to be with people, it's just like checking the residents or the fellows. It really is tedious and boring, and you do it minimally when you check over Teams or Zoom. When you sit next to the resident and there's no interface between you when you're just scrolling up and down, then you're really showing them what you see, what you think is important. You're making random comments, you have random conversations. I think one of the things about being in academics is the ability to have random conversations. We speak about this in multidisciplinary conference. We've had every multidisciplinary conference remote. All our patients are taken care of. We discuss them. But it's the little things. You don't speak to people before and after the meeting. You're not going to have a little side conversation in front of 30 people, obviously. The other thing is things that are academic. You say, gee, here's a good idea. Maybe we could do this project. What do you think? You don't have those what if moments. You don't do what if on Zoom when you have a conference of people. And we used to have 50 some odd people at Pancreas Conference because a lot of the students, nurses, a lot of people would come. Now we have in the low 20s. It's available to everybody. The invitation goes out to 150 people, but I think people just don't really get enthused. They don't have the feel. They don't meet people on Zoom. I think particularly it's true for junior faculty. People don't get to know you. There's minimal conversations. There are people who babble about Zoom and whatever, Microsoft stuff, but it just isn't the same. So I think all of us really look forward to, as things open up, hospitals still, you'll have to wear masks, but I think you'll feel safer, and at some point, obviously, you won't be wearing masks, but I think the ability to sit next to people and review things, those are going to come back. I think that's really how you want to be. You don't want the person taking care of you being a doctor who trained at the end of a iPad or a screen. That's not really what you want. You want that guy who is sitting next to the other people every day. Now it's interesting, Lily put up a poll on Facebook, actually she put it on Twitter, to just ask certain questions related to our Facebook Live conference right now. So she asked people, do you think the pandemic is over? Now you have to remember, the people who answer this are people like you, right? We don't have random people, so it's people probably in the medical profession. And people in the medical profession have probably a more conservative appearance or approach. You think the pandemic is over? 8% of people said yes. 38% no sometime later. No, some 18% said no, but it will be in 2021. And no, sometime in 2022, 35%. So you can see 90+% of the people said we are still in the COVID era. Things are getting better. We can argue whether things will be better in 3 months, 6 months, or a year. Things are getting better, but we still need to be cautious and careful. Question, do you wear a mask when you go outside around other people? 75% of the people said yes. 11.7% said it depends, and 13% said no. But that means 87% of the people are wearing a mask, or at times will wear a mask. And probably when they talk about not wearing a mask when you go outside, if they're going outside with family members, they're not wearing a mask and you're taking a walk, and that makes sense. I never wore a mask, since COVID began. When I was walking near my house, I was walking with the Zinrights, who also were locked up, and so all of us were exceedingly careful. We weren't around other people, but again, so that shows very conservative, and people really are being careful. And the last question, do you think large in-person events like RSNA will begin to happen by the end of 2021? 51% said yes, 49% said no. RSNA swears they're coming back. There are some other meetings that are happening. I told Lily probably the next question we should have asked was, are you ready to go to a meeting? So I would say most people will say no. I think some people actually went to meetings during 2020 and 2021. A handful of people, particularly the ski meetings, they were outside. Some people were cautious but were willing to take more risk than other people. Other people were not. So I don't think, RSNA says they're going to meet. I think it's going to be a very modest meeting. I think RSNA would like to meet, would like things to happen, but I just wonder if it's going to happen. I think that's a whole another thing. So one thing I could ask you is, what do you think? What do you think? Um, if you could write it down, we have a comments section here. There's no comments, but if you have some comments, you could write it down. Would you be willing to go to a radiology meeting? We ran meetings at Hopkins for 37 years. February is always our meeting. We've done 3 more meetings a year, typically in Vegas, Nashville, other places. We did not do a meeting in February 2020. We're not scheduled to do a meeting in February 2021 because I think you might be able to go to a meeting, but I think it's too early. People are going to feel uncomfortable. I'm going to feel uncomfortable. And if you don't have a certain number of people, you're going to lose a fortune of money on the meeting. So I don't think meetings are ready for prime time. I know I'm not ready for prime time meetings. I am scheduled to speak in San Diego at UCSD course in November, if they have it, which is still, they will have it either remotely or in person. But I'm scheduled to be in person, so we'll see. I'm also scheduled to be at Diagnostic Imaging Symposium on CT in December after RSNA time frame. So again, that's 6 months away, so we can be very hopeful that that meeting will indeed occur and occur in person. But again, the question I have for you is, the meeting will occur, will you be there? I think that's going to be a very interesting question, and I think it's going to be very dependent on whether you have kids, how old you are, what your risk factors are, and what you just feel like you should be doing. I think it's very hard. There's some people I know who have traveled the entire 16 months of this mess we've been in called COVID. And there's some people who haven't been outside their house, have not been to a store, so it's really very, very variable. And there is no right answer. There's nothing I really could say to you that would be perfect. So it will be interesting. Other things in terms of COVID, we're talking about ourselves. How should we be doing things moving forward? Should we be having conferences the way we've always had them? Should we go back to the way we did things before? What exactly should we do? What changes should we make on CTisus? Obviously, CTisus, we've always been virtual. We've always been remote. So it hasn't really affected us. It affects the fact that Lily and Sarah are not here. But again, they've been working from home and doing an incredible job. And we meet, and so you can kind of simulate some of the stuff you're doing, but maybe it doesn't have the humanity of it all. So we're looking at things that we can do better at CTisus. In the post-COVID era, should we have our regular CT meetings, which we did 3 or 4 times a year? Or should we do it like we did in February and do it remote for a day or 2? It's a good question. I think people are getting burnt out looking at these screens. This is my 5th meeting today, and it's 12:14. I think there's only so many things you can look at. There's only so many discussions. There's only so much times you can be looking at your own face in the screen and watching your lips move, or you're sitting at meetings where you're kind of looking at your feet, and the meeting goes on, you're not paying attention. I'm sure all of you have the same thing like I do, where you look and you say, oh my God, most people are not paying attention, right? They're just sitting there at the meeting. They're probably looking at their email. Particularly here, you can see me. If I'm looking over there, you kind of know. If I'm looking over there, you kind of know. But if I'm just sitting there, I can look at my phone here, you never would know. Also, people typically put up a black screen. So then you don't know anything. They could be not even wearing any clothes. They could not even be in the room as long as you don't call on them. They could be God knows where. They could be watching cartoons. So here's a comment from Carlos. It is difficult for it to end. I think we're in the middle of the pandemic. Many countries have not started vaccination, and in others, the ignorance of the people makes them not vaccinated. And that's a very good point. I guess I should be careful when I talk about the U.S. It's 50%. Some countries are 3%. Israel is over 70%. UAE is over 70%. India is just a couple percent, and India's had a disaster. The things seem to be leveling off a little bit. So yeah, even asking the questions we asked, it's so variable how you can give the answers. When do you think travel is going to come back from people flying to Europe and Europeans flying here? People flying to China and Chinese people flying here, or Japan or Australia? I don't know. Are you willing to travel? I stayed in a hotel for the first time in 16 months last weekend. It was a New York Marriott downtown, but I was the only person in the hotel. I met 5 other people. But it was empty, so it was very safe. But when are things going to come back? When will people be traveling? I don't know. I think it's going to be a real challenge. For some people, the challenge is more than for others. If you have, I know my children have I have grandchildren, so the kids are under 12. Well, kids are under 12, they've not been vaccinated. As a parent, are you willing to go somewhere where you're vaccinated but the kids aren't? It's a small percent of kids who get sick, but it's possible. You want to be as careful as you can. So what is it you actually do? I think this is really the challenge, and I agree with Carlos. It's not over by any means. I think, to quote Churchill, is not the beginning of the end, but it's the end of the beginning. We have a lot more work to do. I think hopefully we're not going to have any ripples up where we have to, be challenged again. Hopefully things will go smooth, but that's only a hope. I think it's really a challenge for everyone to make certain that everybody is safe and that it's not a U.S. problem. I think, to be fair, we tend to be in the U.S., or I tend to be very U.S. centric. It's a world problem. If the people in India don't get vaccinated, we're in trouble here. So it really needs this universal vaccination. Everybody needs to be vaccinated, and the companies are paying for that. So I think that's going to be a good thing. So let's see. If there's no other questions, I'll leave it there. And again, COVID is an interesting problem. We're getting better. We're getting closer to the end rather than closer to the beginning, but it's still going to take a while, and I recommend that everybody be careful. You can expand your activities, you can do things, but err on the side of caution and be smart. And if you haven't been vaccinated yet, get the damn vaccine. You can get it anywhere, anytime, 24/7, 365. Get it and get it over with. And with that, I wish you a great day, and I'll see you next month. Have a great day.